Horror has always fed on humanity's deepest fears: the shadows in the hallway, the unseen footsteps, and the possibility that someone or something is staring at you out of your vision, hiding in the dark. Most of these fears aren't real, and no one would wish this upon themselves, and no one would ever want to experience these moments home alone late at night. But the adrenaline, those high stakes scenarios where your senses click on your overdrive and you realize that your life might be on the line, that feeling is one of great pleasure. The ecstasy your body feels when you and your brain click into overdrive is a feeling that can't be recreated. That feeling is what horror movies, specifically slashers, are able to give to the human body. Slashers once dominated horror for decades. They created multiple icons, they built franchises, they shaped culture, and is one of the reasons horror is as popular as it is today. Yet, despite all these positives, they're almost gone in today's world. For decades, slashers would allow your fears to be turned into adrenaline, letting audiences experience those dangers in their own home or in the safety of a theater seat, making it feel that the audience is being chased, that the audience is the actor in the scenario, and that their life is on the line. But today, in our world, that era feels distant. The icons that once terrified generations, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger, are no longer dominating the screens the way they used to. Slashers didn't vanish overnight, though. Their disappearance was slow and messy. However, their disappearance can be attributed to three things: failed sequels mixed with bad plots and a major horror cultural shifts. Before we talk about the decline of slashers, we really need to understand how big slashers were. Slashers are defined as a horror subgenre focused on people, especially younger women, being killed by sharp objects. Despite this simple premise, they have had a huge cultural impact. These films didn't just entertain audiences, they redefined horror. And no movie did this better than the release of John Carpenter's Halloween.
Okay, come on out.
Releasing in 1978, Halloween follows the story of Laurie Strode, a high schooler living in Haddonfield. She works as a babysitter part-time and decided that this Halloween that she would work as a babysitter. However, unknown to her, Michael Myers has escaped, and now her and her group of friends have to survive Michael Myers throughout the movie. The impact that this movie had on culture and horror cannot be stated. However, I can show you the numbers, or I can talk about them. So Halloween had a budget of $325,000, which isn't that much at the time and not enough today with how expensive everything is. However, it grossed over $47 million in the box office. Due to this popularity, Michael Myers instantly became a symbol for horror. His mask, his stature, and his silence were all instantly recognizable. Halloween also would mark the beginning point of an era called the slasher era, in which slashers were being produced and audience were loving them. They were getting Hollywood executives were getting money, audience were loving all the characters, and the slasher era would produce two more horror mascots, those being Jason Voorhees, which is related to Friday the 13th, and Freddy Krueger, who is related to Nightmare on Elm Street. During this period, slashers has never been bigger, have they, like, during that time. But once studios realized how popular and how much money slashers made, real problems started to arise. Studios wanted sequels, lots of sequels. And quickly after the success of Halloween 1, Halloween 2 was announced. Released in 1981, it had a much bigger budget, around $2.5 million compared to the $325,000 the original had. And fans were excited. The original cast was returning, the story continued, the relationship or not really the relationship of victim and killer between Laurie Strode, a fan favorite character, and Michael Myers, another fan favorite character, continued, and fans were ready to just view that. However, there is one issue. the movie just didn't hit the same. On IMDb, a popular website for audiences to leave their reviews, 82% of the total reviews for Halloween 1 was rated a 7 out of 10 or higher, while Halloween 2, only 56% of their total reviews were above or equal to a 7. Audience would call Halloween 2 a slow, unnecessary movie filled with plot choices nobody asked for, and this wouldn't be the last time a sequel has dragged a franchise down. No series shows this better than Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th originally followed Pamela Voorhees getting revenge after negligence from counselors at a camp caused the death of her son, which was in the first movie. The sequel then follows her son, Jason Voorhees, who is actually alive, doing the same and killing unlawful sex having, drinking having. They just were not good teenagers at the camp. The third movie would also repeat the same plot, but it would be the film where Jason's explored a little bit more and Jason gets his iconic mask and machete. However, writers realized that if they continued the same plot, audiences were going to get bored and leave more negative reviews. The writing team decided to take a big change in direction and to have a major twist in the next movie. In the fourth movie, titled Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, this movie once again follows Jason Voorhees as he goes back to the camp to kill a group of teenagers. However, this movie isn't the same as the other ones, because in the end of the movie, Jason Voorhees is killed off. This, at the time, was a drastic change. Nobody would have expected a franchise to kill off their most profitable and loved character, especially Jason Voorhees, as he was one of, if not the most popular horror mascots at the time. This twist actually, surprisingly, wasn't completely hated on. Some people actually liked the death of Jason Voorhees, though the majority, seeing their favorite character getting killed off in a pretty mediocre movie, left them with a sour taste in their mouth. But those who were fans of gore, and they left pleased. Jason died in a pretty brutal way with a machete going through his eye, and most fans would agree that though it wasn't the perfect ending, it was an alright ending to end both Jason's character and the series. However, studios would not listen to the audience. Instead, studios tried to make a fifth movie, but without Jason, and was trying to replace him with a new killer. Friday the 13th, A New Beginning would be the fifth movie in the franchise, and would be the worst performing movie in the franchise, only earning an audience score of 26% on Rotten Tomatoes, which, compared to the original, which I think is around 50%, is a huge drop, and it is the worst received movies in the franchise. From there, the plot decided to get stranger. The latest original series release in the Friday the 13th franchise that isn't a remake was Jason X. Made in 2001, it shows Jason in the future being frozen in a stasis chamber. He is unfrozen and is on a futuristic spaceship, and believe me or not, Jason actually goes on a killing spree. He becomes fused with nanobots and becomes a cyborg. This series, the reason why I bring this up is because it shows how the plots continue to derail from from the ideas that made the original movie so great. Instead of focusing on expanding Jason's character, expanding on the characters themselves, maybe having a character come back multiple times, kind of like Laurie Strode, the creation of new and rushed plots would soon spread throughout multiple franchises and multiple slasher franchises. And they would all be negatively received by the audiences, and was one of the reasons why that slashers, especially slashers franchises, have had a massive decline in production. However, the biggest change and the most significant change to affect slashers was the cultural shift, or the found footage movie takeover. The final nail in the coffin for all slashers was the cultural shift in horror, and that shift started in 1999 with the release of the Blair Witch Project. This movie, imagine what I said about Halloween and how influential, multiply that by 10. This movie was directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sánchez. The Blair Witch Project follows a group of teenagers inside the Maryland forest, leaving only behind their found footage. Shot like a real found footage horror movie, This film only had a tiny budget of $60,000. It made $248 million in the box office, which leads to around a 6,000% increase compared to the original 145 times percent increase. This completely changed the horror franchise and Hollywood franchise. It showed that audiences were ready for a new era and that slashers were no longer the thing. It was no longer the slasher era was ending, and a new era of found footage horror movies mixed with a little bit of supernatural in them was replacing them. Low budget, shaky camera, and a little bit of supernatural was the new formula for horror movies, and the audience were loving it. Movies like Paranormal Activity and Annabelle and Insidious just completely were the last nail to just seal up and remove slashers from Hollywood and horror. Slashers defined an era, and I love slashers, but I can admit that they have been very severely wronged. And the combination of of failed sequels, rushed plots, and massive horror cultural shifts ultimately pushed them out of the spotlight. There are still slashers being created in today's age, don't get me wrong, but they just have failed to have the same cultural impact like old slashers have. Yet, these old slasher mascots, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger, are still being used in today's media and shows like Family Guy and video games like Dead by Daylight. It just goes to show you how much of an impact these movies had, just in general. Slashers may no longer dominate theaters, but their presence is still in our culture. It reminds us of a time where horror movies were more focused on the gruesome kills and that feeling of adrenaline pumping through your veins than being scared about the supernatural. It reminds us of a time where horror was sharp, simple, and unforgettable.